It's the top of the hour, so I think let's go ahead and get going. So welcome everyone to this week's this month's Think Data Thursday. I'm very happy to have one of our Tableau community forum ambassadors with us this morning, Simon Runc. Simon Runc's a visual data analyst at Atheon Analytics, where he humanizes data for the retail sector. He's got over 10 years experience across many analytical roles. He's all about data-driven decision-making, and data visualization is his weapon of choice in this endeavor. He started using Tableau in 2014. If I remember right, he became an ambassador in 2015 from looking at the lists, and where it was love at first sight, and then, yeah, became a Tableau ambassador in 2015. He attributes most of his Tableau knowledge to his engagement in the forums, and we're just really glad to have him here. He's presented before and shared his bike riding adventures in a previous Think Data Thursday. So if you haven't seen that, I encourage you to go to our YouTube channel and find that and watch it as well. And before we get going, I will be recording this presentation. It will appear on our YouTube channel later this afternoon once I've edited it down and posted it. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Simon.
On this Think Data Thursday on Lights, Camera, Actions, we'll be talking about all things action. So first of all, let's have a quick look at the agenda of what we're going to talk about today. So first of all, I want to go into why even use actions and why actions are important. I want to sort of wax lyrical about why are they so awesome in Tableau. We'll then have a quick look at do a quick Tableau filter action. So we're mainly concentrating on filter actions today, with a quick 101 on the options we have within actions and also how they're implemented in Tableau. We can then use these options implementation to do some pretty cool things by getting creative with them. So we're going to show some action-driven sheet swaps, the idea of global and local filtering, and a few other little tricks as well. And then finally, we'll have a little look into the future of actions and have a look at some of the new little toys we've got in the Tableau Beta 3 release at the moment. So first off, why actions? Why even use actions? Well, actions or interactivity is kind of what brings your viz to life. So in my mind, this is the difference between visual reporting, that what happened, and visual analytics, why did it happen and how can we avoid, repeat, or learn from it. So it enhances the analytics flow and allows yourself or the end user, depending if you're designing for yourself or somebody else, to reveal the relevant information as you require it. So to find a pattern, an anomaly, or a problem at a higher level and be able to drill down into the data to get that context or to home in on the exact action to take. So if we think about a KPI dashboard and say the KPI is looking at year-on-year sales, and the dashboard shows us that the business is down 5%. So that tells us what happened, but not why it happened. Maybe there's another viz on the dashboard which shows us the category, and we can see that the category is driving that decline. So we've got a bit more on the what, but still no real why. So to be able to click on that category and then see the product performance underlying that, suddenly we can see if it's a couple of products with an issue, or is it across all products in that category? And suddenly we now have some lines of inquiry. Did we change strategy on those products or the category? Did we have availability issues? Was there a change in the market conditions? And so good interactivity lets us answer the next question and the next question and the next one. So interacting with your data in this way is a very intuitive way by clicking on charts as you find things that are interesting, and it lets us achieve this visual analytics approach. So that is why actions are so important. I've got a couple of examples here where you can see the detail being revealed as and when you need it to give you a bit more context and actually understand exactly what's driving the behavior you spotted earlier on. So the next thing to have a look at quickly is why are actions in Tableau awesome. So when I think of software, especially sort of visualization software or software, BI software that helps you analyze data, there's kind of two ends of the spectrum in my view that have pros and cons. So at one end you have a software that does everything for you. You literally just say viz this and it does it for you. So something like Visible, I don't know if anyone's ever used that. It's an app that Tableau developed. You have it on your phone or your tablet, and you can, if someone sends you a spreadsheet by email or a CSV, you can say open in Visible, and Visible will will create a chart for you. Now, the advantage of that, obviously, is it's very fast. It requires absolutely no training whatsoever. Disadvantage is you have absolutely no control over what it looks like. You can't change the visuals very much. You can change some of the measures, but basically, it builds it for you. At the other end of the spectrum, you've got things like sort of D3 and sort of the JavaScript visualization libraries, where you can absolutely handcraft every visual that you want. You can set exactly how it behaves, exactly how it looks. You have complete and utter control over exactly what it looks like. So that's the advantage. This advantage is it's complicated to learn. It takes a lot of time to even build sort of fairly straightforward charts, or it can do. So the holy grail, I think, for features and concepts within sort of within this software space is simple concepts that can be combined and used imaginatively to create complicated behavior. And I've got these starlings here. This little GIF is a good example of that. They have 3 rules: move in the same direction as your neighbor, remain close to them, and avoid collisions. And with these 3 simple rules, they create these absolutely fantastic patterns in the sky. And I think Tableau absolutely nailed this, certainly in 2 regards. One is the blue and green pills, which I could go on about for hours, but I shan't. And the other one is actions. And both of these features have barely changed in the last, well, blue and green pills, not since Tableau was, I think first came out. And actions, I think for the last 8 years, they've barely changed, apart from a little bit of an update to the dialog box. Because Tableau, in my view, absolutely nailed it first time. So let's have a quick Actions 101, and I will show you how we implement them, how they work, and then we'll start picking them apart, and we'll start doing a few cool little things with them. So first of all, if we want to create, we've got a dashboard here showing me my sales by category, by year. I've got below here, I've got a time series chart over the last 4 years, and I've got for the current year, 2013, I'm using an old version of Superstore, it shows me my top 10 products. And if I wanted to create an action to filter, the simplest way to do it is to get Tableau to build it for you, and I can just click this button here which says use as filter, and there we go. And I could also do it here. I can also put use as filter in this little drop down here, and what this does is this makes this sheet here a filter for the other sheets. So if I click on 2011 here, it sends that action to the other sheets. Now in fact, I never ever use this option. It's far too broad. It sends every dimension in view. So if we look at the level of detail of this visual here, we've got year, we've got category. It's sending both. So what's happened here is I've now got chairs and chair mats, but I've only got it for 2011. This is completely gone because there are no, because we're only looking at 2013 data. So it's far too broad a brush. So let's go and have a look what Tableau has built for us. So if we go into dashboard and we go into actions, we can see here is the generated thing as a generated filter. Let's go in here and have a look what it's built. So what it's built is we have a source sheet. So which sheets, when I click, do I want the filter to come from? And in here, it's my bar chart. How do I want it to act? How do I want it to run? So select as the default, but I can also do it on hover or with a menu. And which sheets do I want it to send the dimension to? And it's also just going to send every dimension, so both year and category. So as I said, this is too broad for me, so I always specifically say what I want sent. So I can go in here and I can say, I just want you to send category. I don't care that there's years in the visualization. I just want to send the category. So now if I click on it like that, now when we go back into our action here, so now it now behaves how we want. We're now sending just the category, but we're still retaining all 4 years in our line chart. But it has made a bit of a mess here, so we'll have a look how we can clear that up in a second. So how does Tableau implement these actions? So let's have a look in the sheet here. And Tableau implements these actions through way of a set filter. So you can see it here. Here's my action on category. You have to click it once in order to generate this set. But once you've generated this set action, it's like a regular filter. You can use it like a normal filter. We can go here. We can apply it to other worksheets. We can do other things with it. So if I go into my edit filter, one of the things that you might not know about filters is you don't have to send a filter the value from its list of values. So if I go into my custom value list, you can see here's my copies and faxes. Let's get rid of that. And let's send this not a category. And you must press the plus sign, by the way. And so click on there. And see, we can send it not a category, and it's had the quite interesting effect of collapsing the visual. So we remember that because we'll be using this later on. So we can do what I just did there through actions. We don't need to send the same dimension to the same dimension. So if I go into my bar chart here, I'm just going to create a calculated field, and we're going to call it not a cat and not a category as a string. So this is just going to be the string, not a category, applied to every single row. I click on that. Okay, not a category. I then could bring it into my vis level of detail. This is very important. If you want to send a dimension in an action, it has to be in the level of detail. It could be on the columns or the rows or the color shelf, or just the detail. It needs to be in the level of detail. So if I now go back into my actions, I can go dashboard, action. We can go back and change this action now, and we can go in here and I can actually say, no, I want you to send not a cat to category. So I'm sending that to that. So I'm sending the string not a cat category to the field category, and it will do exactly what I just did before. It will collapse both sheets. And if we're going to have a look in our time series, we will see that it is done exactly what I just did. So this is quite an interesting thing to know, and keep that in mind because we'll be using that later on. I'm just going to undo that because that doesn't make a lot of sense to do it. So the other thing that we noticed here was our top 10 went a bit awry. So if I click on here, oh, I must have not a category. 1 second. I didn't move enough backs. Okay, let's go in here. There we go, all back. And so the problem here is I've asked for a top 10, but it's only showing me, say, 3 products here. Now the reason for that is that I've used the top 10 in my filter here. So if I go into here and go into my edit filter, and I've used the top 10. So I've used the top 10 filtering here, and a top 10 in a filter is computed before any regular filters are applied. So what it's doing is it's working out the top 10 globally, and then when I filter on my current category, which is copies and faxes, it's showing me if there's any of those are in copies and faxes, it shows me the 3 that are in. So the way that we can get around this is we need to bump this action filter up the calculation pipeline so that it gets applied before the top 10 is. And we can do that by making it a context. And because this is a regular filter, we can go add to context. And now we have a context filter action. So this action will now affect LODs, conditional sets, and also top 10s as well. So that's our first little trick we can do, and this is just because they behave like completely regular filters. Now one thing to note is once you set this up, if you do a switch data source, it tends to lose that context. You have to go back and set it up again, so just a word of warning there. So armed with that knowledge, that's all we need to know. We can do some pretty cool things. So let's have a look at the first one of these. So we're going to have a look at an action-driven sheet swap. So we're going to use an action to actually drive a sheet swap here. So I've got a dashboard here. It's showing me some sales for each of my departments. I've got here a department time series, and I've got here something that's showing me the subcategory level below each department, or the category level below each department as a variance chart. So the first thing I can do is I can make this particular viz here show and hide when I click on something, and I've already set this action up, so we're going to have a quick look at this action. I'm just going to, just so it makes life a bit easier, there we go. So we can go into our dashboard action here, and I've set up this action here. So we've set this up. So when I click on the department bar chart with a select and department bar chart here, target the time series category, that is this visual just here, and send it department. So we've we've told it to send department, and when we clear the filter, we want to exclude all values. So that has the effect of basically collapsing the visual when we do it. So if we click on that, we can see how that works. So that's quite nice. That's quite nice. But what I'd really like to happen is I'd really like actually this one to vanish and this to get the entire full screen. So how can we do that? So If you remember from our not a category from before, if we go into, oops, sorry, not that one. I meant to go into this one here. If we go into here, I've set up 2 dummy fields. One is called 1 and is the number 1. And I've got another one called 0, which is the number 0. I've made them dimensions and I've added it to my level of detail here. So I have access to it in my actions. So now I can go in here, and very similar to what we did with the category, not a category, I can go in here, I can call this kill department time series. Good practice is always to name your actions with something you can understand, because you call it action 1, action 2, action 3. You come back into this and it's an absolute nightmare to try and work out what everything does. So when I click on my department department bar charts, I want to send 1, 2, and we need to always make sure that you're sending it to the data source you want. You can send actions across data sources, and we'll have a look at a bit of that later as well. And I'm going to send 1 to 0. And when we clear the action, I want it to show all values. So I want that to re-show again. So those 2 actions I've had there combined will now have the effect that when I click on a category or department, sorry, I see the category performance below that. And if I unclick that, I get the time series. So we've now achieved using that, using exactly the same options. There's no fancy, there's no Python connections, there's no custom SQL, there's no crazy nested table calcs. Very simply, just with a little bit of creativity, a little bit of logic, we've got ourselves an action-driven sheet swap. So let's have a look at a slightly more complicated example to show that we can take this on even further. So if I click over here, I've got another dashboard here. I've got 2 KPI tiles, one showing me the last 12 weeks performance, and it's year on year, and one showing me last 52 weeks performance, year on year, and along here the performance for the last 12 weeks, and another one showing me that variance. I've got another one for 52 weeks. And I've also got 2 time series, one for 12 weeks. I mean, they both actually show the full 52 weeks, but I've put a reference band in here to indicate we're looking at the last 12 weeks, or in here to indicate the last 52 weeks. So what I really like to do is, if I click on this tile, I want to show the bar and line chart which reflect the last 12 weeks. If I click on this one, I want to show 52 weeks. So how can we do this? So I'm just going to delete, I have created these actions, I'm just going to remove them, and we'll build them from scratch. It's just in case I mess this up, I can use the undo to get me out of a hole. So if I go in here, and so the first thing we want to do is we want to kill the 52s when 12 KPI is clicked. So what we can do is we can go in here, and the KPI 12, so that is this tile here. We can click on that. We should do it on a select. We're going to leave the clean selection. Will leave the filter this time, and I'll explain exactly why in a second. And we want to send this to our 52-week time series and our 52-week bar charts, and we're going to send it. Again, we're going to send it 1 equals 0, and that should kill the 52 when we click on a 12. So let's check that's working. I click on 12, and it shows me the 12-week versions. Very nice. So now we just need to do that again for the 52-week ones. So let's go into my filter here. There we go, that's why I copied it, 12, 52. So this time, when we click on our KPI tile 52, so that is that one there, I select and leave the filter again, where this time we want to kill the time series 12 and the category bar chart 12, and again, we will send it the illogical argument of 1 equals 0. And so we click on that, click OK, and now we click on that, that is now going to kill the 12s. But we have a bit of a problem here because we've now killed them both. So how do we also need a resurrect action as well. We need to undo the 1 equals 0. So let's go into our actions again. And this time I'm going to set up another one here, which is going to be our resurrect 12 at 12s on 12 KPI click. If we go into here, so when we click this time, the KPI 12, we're going to do a select. And the reason we're going to leave the filtering here is that when we unclick on these, we don't want everything to come back again and show us the 4 charts at the bottom. We only want to see 2 at a time. So that's why we've done the leave as filter. So we go into here. So when I click on KPI 12, I want to target the bar chart category 12 and the time series category 12. And this time I'm going to undo the logic. So I'm going to send it 1 equals, oops, no, we're going to send it 1 equals 1. And I'm also going to send it 0 equals 0. This is just to be super safe that everything's going to work. Equals 0. So we're going to undo any bad, any sort of bad arguments we've sent it that cause it to collapse, and that will resurrect it. And we're going to create exactly the same again for our 52s. So when I click 52, I want to resurrect all the 52s when I click on the 52 KPI tile. So if I go into here, there's my KPI 52. Click on that. We're going to select, and then we're going to leave the filter again. We're going to go down here, and we want this to affect our time series 52. And our category 52, we're going to select, and again, we're going to send 1 equals 1 and 0 equals 0. So one thing I should have pointed out, actually, just very quickly, is that I have added both 1 and 0 to the KPI tile detail so that I have them as options in my actions. And so now when I click on 12, it shows me 12. I can click off it. It will click on 52. It showed me 52 week. So this actually was to solve a problem where somebody was using they wanted a KPI dashboard on their tablet. I had 4 KPIs across the top of different time scales, and they could use their buttons, these buttons, to basically show the relevant information for that particular time slice. So this is not just a spurious use, it is actually genuine good use cases. So these work very well on tablets and mobiles because you want to click big buttons to do things, not fiddle around with parameter settings to do sheet swaps. So that is action-driven sheet swaps, a slightly more complicated version. So what else can we do with actions? We can do some even other cool things as well. So before I go into my next bit, I did just want to give you a little bit of context around this next set of dashboards we're going to look at. I'm not going to turn this into a retail logistics webinar, I promise, but it's quite useful to understand why we came up with these tricks. They were to solve particular business problems, and I wanted you to sort of see exactly why we solved them this way and why we developed these cool little tricks. Or actually, one we developed and one we stole mercilessly from Joshua Milligan, one of the current Zen Masters. So in retail, one of the key things, even as a customer, you'll be aware of this, is availability. So having a product on shelf when a customer wants to buy it. And I'm sure many of you have been frustrated going to a retailer to buy your favorite product for it not to be there on shelf. Now, products don't just magically appear on shelf. They get there through what we know as the flow of goods. So initially, the retailer places an order with the supplier, and the supplier then sends that into the depot. Then the stores demand stock from the depot, and the depot then sends stock out to the stores put it out onto the shelf, and then the customer does the final 5 yards, as it's called, and takes that product from the shelf to the checkout and pays for it, and we've completed the flow of goods. So we want our users to be able to basically navigate through this flow of goods, and we want them to be able to navigate it through in a very natural way. And we also want to dedicate entire screens to each part of the flow. But as I've said, they are interdependent, so you need to be able to move from one to the other to see how did a supplier not delivering an order affect my depot's ability to fulfill store demand, for example, or if maybe we missed an order and it actually hasn't caused a problem, it was just a single missed order. So we wanted to be able a way that people could move up and down through the flow of goods in a very natural way. And the other thing we wanted them to be able to do was to filter throughout this as well. We wanted them to be able to find some products that had a problem in one part of the flow of goods and then have a look at those products in another part of the flow of goods as well. So these are the two problems we're going to solve now. So the first one to solve is how do we navigate? So I'll show you the problem first of all. So here's our dashboard. This looks at the inbound stock. So this is the stock coming from suppliers into the depot network, and I've got some KPIs along the top here, and this just shows me, this surfaces to the top, the products that over the last 7 days have missed the most orders. So in terms of absolute cases, so these are my products here that I really want to focus on. These are the things that I really want to follow through the flow of goods and see what impact they've had in terms of customer availability. So I've created these navigations here. If we, I'm just going to exit out of full screen mode. And if we have a look at these, all these are this is just a bar chart. I've made it super big, nothing special here, just makes it look like quite a nice button, and also it resizes quite nicely, unlike shapes and squares, so it's quite a nice way of doing it. And I've put that into my navigation at the top here, and what I can do is I can go to my action and I can create a navigation. So this is going to be nav to outbound. And I've got my my outbounds. This is my navigation here. This is this button here, and I'm going to do it on a select. And on Tableau, we can navigate between different dashboards. So I'm going to go to my outbound nav, where I've got an equivalent button on there, which I'm going to send this to. I'm not going to do anything else. I'm just going to do that, and click on that. Click OK, and now I click on outbound, and I go through to my outbound screen, and I'm going to click separate. And I've also got an equivalent action that also takes me back again. So exactly the same. It goes from the outbound nav, goes to the inbound nav, and it's just on a select. So this is just a pure navigation. So when I click on here, I go back again. Now the problem that you'll see is this. Is that this doesn't deselect itself. So I click on it, I click on it again, and because this was selected before, I click on it again. And this clicking on a button to do something twice is just, you think it's broken basically. If you're used to Tableau, you kind of know why this is happening. But if you're not, and you're a user, you just say, well, it's not working, it's broken. I mean, how many buttons do you know on websites that you happily click twice? You don't exactly, you think it's broken. So we need to sort of solve this problem. So what we want is a self-deselecting navigation, and this is a pretty old trick actually, but I've answering stuff from the community, it seems not everyone has come across this one. So this first time I've come across this was through Joshua Milligan in a blog about, I think in 2015 from memory. I've also seen people like Andrew Watson, who's occasionally in the community, he's written a very good blog on a slightly different way of doing this as well. And to create these self-deselecting navigations. So the way I've done it is, or the way Joshua did it, and the way I've copied Joshua, is I've created a separate navigational data source. Now this navigational data source is just the numbers 1 to 100, nothing special here. In fact, here it is. Numbers 1 to 100. It doesn't actually need to be to 100. Numbers 1 to 10 will be fine, but I find it quite useful having the numbers 1 to 100 in a data source for varying reasons anyway. And the key is we set up this increment ID. So if we look at this increment ID here, if ID equals 100, then 1, else ID plus 1. So what this does is it makes the increment ID 1 above the ID until it gets to 100, when it starts all over again. So I have built some navigation buttons off my navigational data source. There we go, navigational data source, increment ID. I've added increment ID to my level of detail. Now, I will try and explain exactly how this works. To be honest with you, I didn't understand it for the first 5 months I used it, and it didn't stop me from using it. It has, but it's quite nice to understand things occasionally. So what we're going to do is, the first thing to notice here is we have down here 100 marks because we've brought in the increment ID, of which there's 100, into my level of detail. So we've got 100 bar charts with the word outbound on them stacked up for one another 100 times. Okay, so that's the first thing to note. So we go into here, and here's my outbound button here. So I go into my dashboard and my actions, and I go filter, and we're going to set this is, oops, nav to outbound, and we're going to select our nav to outbound. We'll do it on select. We're going to do a leave all filter, and we're going to do it sending it to, what am I doing? We're going to send it, not to itself, we're going to send it to the outbound screen where there is another navigation. And we are going to, this time, we're going to select something here. We're actually going to send the increment ID to the ID. So if you remember from before, we don't need to send the same we can send a different field to a different field. That's absolutely fine. As long as we have the increment ID in the target, in the source sheet, that's absolutely fine. So what this is going to do is when I click on my outbounds, that is going to send me to the outbound screen. If I have a look at my inbound navigation, I have this ID equals 100 because so if you have a look now at my number of marks, we've now only got one mark. And because this is a regular filter, what I can do is I can apply it to all using this data source. So what's actually happening here is when we click the mark, so say we're on ID equals 1, so the top sheet is ID equals 1. So think of this as a set of post-it notes next to one another with the numbers 1 to 100. We click 1, so 1 is selected. However, it then sends itself increment ID, which equals 2, but it's sent to the ID field. So what we do is the one that's been selected, that's the one that's already been selected, then gets filtered out, and then 2 is the one that is then shown, and 2 hasn't been clicked yet, and therefore it is deselected. So that's how this trick basically works. And so what I can then do is I can set up the equivalent action, dashboard action, and I can do I've also set it up here. That's good at me. So again, exactly the same. We are going to go from our navigational data source inbound button. We're going to take that to our navigational source outbound button. We're going to send the increment ID to the ID again. We're going to leave as filter, and now when I click on inbounds, it goes back, and this now deselects itself as I click. So we get a very natural way of doing this with infinite. And if I've done it a few times, if we go back and, oops, not that button, that one. If we go back and have a look at our thing, we're now on ID 4 because every time we click it, it toggles through, but when it gets to 100, it starts again. So it's a never-ending self-deselecting filter. So yeah, that's a pretty cool solution, very useful, and gives you a very natural way for users to navigate through your dashboards and follow their analytics flow. So here's the full dashboard where we can move between the different parts of the flow of goods, between the outbound, the inbound, the stock. We can then move to availability, etc. as well. So one of the other things we wanted to do was to allow people to select some products here. These are the products that I've got a problem with, and then take these products through to the outbound screen and see how has these inbound problems affecting outbound, and then even like the outbound, how's the outbound problems affecting store stock or start at stock, which products have got very low stock. Let's select those and let's move back through the flow of goods to see, is it a problem with outbound, is it a problem with inbound, who do I need to call, what action do I need to take? So the way we can do this is I've got this little viz here. If we go into this is just a brushed bar chart. So what it does is it's showing me the number of products that are currently in view. And if I just show you how that works, oh, no, didn't want to do that. Thank you for the undos, Tableau. So if I click on here, if I click yogurts, this just brushes back and just reflects that. If you haven't seen how this works, just go to Google and say Tableau bar brushing, and you will find lots of blogs, including one of our own developers, on exactly how you can do this trick. And the other key to this is I have got a SKU description, which is the thing I'm using in my main level of detail, which I'll show you in a second. And I've also created a duplicate of it, this SKU and description global. So this is just a duplicate of SKU and description. I've just renamed it SKU and description global just for clarity, but it's just a copy of that exact same field. So I've already got an action on this. I've already got what I like to think of as a local action on here. So if I click on this particular product, I've got some issues here. Click on this. It shows me exactly how this product's been delivered over the last 28 days. I can see it's back in stock. I can see the depot stock. I can see which depots are affected, etc. But what I really like to do is to be able to select a load of things and add them to this global filter, move through, and then also ideally change them as well without having to come back here again. So if I look at my SKU level or my product level viz, I'm just going to move this up here so you can see it. I have brought in here my SKU description global. So this here is SKU and description, and this here is SKU and description global. So I have access to both of them in my viz. So what I can do is I can go to my dashboard and go to my actions. So here is my filter SKU action. So I'm just sending SKU and description to all the other visuals. But what I can do also is I can go filter, and this one we're going to treat as a menu because I think these sort of actions require menu. You don't want every time you click on something for it to drive some global behavior. So you need to do this implicitly, I think. So we're going to call this add to global. We are going to, our source sheet is going to be our SKU chart. So here's my SKU bar charts. We're going to send it just initially to this global filter outbound. If I select on that, we're going to leave the filter because we want it to stay, and we're just going to send. We're going to make sure that we only send SKU and description global to this. So now I have quite a nice action where I can go like that. I've got the option. I tell you what I didn't do. I did not make it a menu action. There we go. Right, let's start again. So we're just going to clear this off here. There we go. Right. Take two. Right, so if I grab these as my problem products, I've now got the option to add to my global filter. I can add to global. So I've now, you can see over here, it's now showing me 8 out of 121 I've been added to the global filter. But it's not actually globally filtered it yet because I've still got all my products in my view here. But as we know, it's just a normal filter. So I can go into here. I can say apply to everything using this data source. Click back in here. And it's now a completely global filter. So I still have my local filtering, which is on SKU and description, but my global filtering is on SKU and description global. And in actual fact, we can go even further, because one of the things you don't want to do is, say you get to stock and you want to add another product in because you want to add something in. You don't have to come all the way back here to change your selection. So what we can do here is, if we go into here, and it's just a regular filter. And so we can see it here. There's our action filter on global. Let's go like that. It's just a normal filter now. And let's make it a bit nicer. Let's make it a multi-value drop down. Let us also, let's add an apply button, make it all very nice. And so now this filter is actually my global actions. So if I want to add another couple of products back in, I can do it there. There we go. I can filter from here. And what I can do is I can move to my outbound now. I can move to the outbound stock and I can see those products have been filtered, and say I think, oh right, okay, actually I've got a problem with my raspberry jelly. I know that strawberry jelly is a transferable product. I can click on jelly, I can add in my strawberry jelly and just make sure that I've not got stock issue on both my fruit jellies. So this is a way that you have this, but I can still do my filtering locally to investigate things. So this is the idea of a global setting and a local setting that gives a very intuitive view for the user. So let's see what else we can do. So we've got one more trick to show you, which is a little bit of a crazy trick. This is going to combine everything we've just learned to create something that's actually hard to say. It is a toggling self-deselecting sheet swapper. Okay, so let's, one of the things we do with all of our models is we let everyone get back to the data whenever they want to, because visualization is a great way of finding patterns in data. seeing how things have changed, to highlighting things to yourself. But when you actually want to take that action, you've got to make that action's got to be a number. Like you can't send a bar chart to your taxman, or you can't send a bar chart to your factory and say make this many. They actually need a number. So we always say once you've found your insight, you can get to the data. So all of our things have data screens. So if I click on my data screen here, it shows me for the last 14 days. It shows me my stock position in total, in depot, and in store stock. And I've got this quite nice thing here, which I'm going to show you how to build. So if you look at here, I've got a plus sign, so because I can look at the depots and the individual depots. I click on that, and there are my depots, and you can see it's deselected itself and changed to a minus. So it's toggling and deselecting and doing a sheet swap all at the same time. So how do we do this? Okay, so the first thing is it's built off the navigational data source because it is because it's self-deselecting. So I've got a separate one here, which is just the numbers 1 to 100 again. And what I've done is I've created an odd and an even true or false field. And I've done that like this. So for those who don't know, that is the modular sign, which just says what's the remainder of a division. So anything that when divided by 2 returns 0 is even, and anything that's not is odd. So I get this nice true, I get a true false for each of the numbers. And as you know, as we click on things, we're going to toggle through to 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's going to create our toggle effect. And the other thing we can do is I've used this odd even in the actual thing itself to be a shape. So one of the false or the odd ones are minus signs, and the even ones are plus signs. If I take these off, this will actually explain to you how the self-deselection works a lot better. This is what you've actually got. You've got 100 versions of it that go, and in my version, because I've got my odd even, they go plus minus, plus minus, plus minus, plus minus. And so by selecting each one, it will toggle between them, it'll toggle between either showing a plus sign or showing an even sign. So that's how we can get it to toggle as we click it. So the other thing we need to do though is how do we get it to collapse and uncollapse this sheet here? So this is a little bit more thinking about. So what I've done here is in my real data source, I've created my odd even fields. So that can map exactly to that odd and even. However, whereas this one has odds and evens, this one only has true. So it only has even equals true. So I put that into my filter, odd, even, and I set it by using a thing to only equal true. So what that means is when this is false, like this, it collapses. When it is true, which it currently is, it shows. So if we have a look at our action for this, so let's go into our stock detail, and there we go. So if we go and look at our action for this, so our action is, so the first one is the increment ID. So that is set up exactly the same as the other one. So we toggle the toggle navigation. We're going to need to send this though to the actual target sheet, not the sheet within the dashboard, because we want this increment ID to actually affect that particular sheet, to basically affect itself. When you're sending an action to itself and you want it to actually affect the sheet you've just clicked, you need to actually send it to the target sheet itself. So that's what creates the toggling, and the other bit is what creates the ShowHide Detail, and that is basically our 1 and 0 trick. So we're using toggle ID, and we're sending it to our depot table. We're on select, we've got a leave all filter, and we're going to send from navigational data sources, odd, even, but here we're going to send it to a different data source, so we can choose where we send it to. We're going to send it to odd and even in that one. So it's going to send either true or false to my what's called SKU track feeder. It's going to send either true or false, and when it's true, it's going to show it, and when it's false, it's going to collapse it, and that's how we can get a self-deselecting, toggling sheet swapper, which is actually harder to say than it is to build. So those are those are some sort of tricks, and sort of hopefully you can see how by creatively using actions and the simple options that we've got, why the genius way in which Tableau implemented them, and the options we have gives us access to some very cool and very bespoke behavior. And before I leave you, I just want to give you a quick glimpse into the future on a couple of things. One that's become a lot easier, and another one that is something we couldn't even do before. So these are the first changes I've seen to actions since I started using Tableau 4 or 5 years ago. And so the first one is those navigations that we used to do on the data source. It has got a lot easier. We now have this new object called button, and we drag our button in here, and we then go to edit button, and we say, where do we want to navigate? I want to navigate to Outbound. This is a default image. I'm not sure what the final release would be if it does get released. Remember, everything on beta isn't guaranteed to be released, but I'd be amazed if this isn't. Hint, Tableau. And I want to go to my, this is going to my Outbound, so I've actually just taken a picture of my Outbound. I can add to my image. And I can do the same. One thing to note is this doesn't actually work in regular mode, which is quite obvious why, because if you want to actually make the edit and click on it, it would constantly take you to another dashboard. So Tableau quite sensibly made it that you can use, I think it's Alt and click to make it work, or if you're in presentation mode, it just works. So I go into there, and I'm going to have another one here. Let's go to edit button. So this one's going to go to my inbound. I'm going to use my inbound image that I took a picture of. I can also have I can put some text in here, click here to change dashboard or whatever as well. So I've got a couple of options there. And now, without having any data sources or any problem, I can just click between the two, and they are self-deselecting, like proper buttons. So that has just got a lot easier. Now, the other thing is a brand new action type, and I've only just started playing with this. So we have got a new action type which gets over what I feel is one of the problems, one of the main use cases for what people want as multi-select parameters. When we're desktop users and authors, we have access to sets and groups, and we can change aggregations on the fly however we want, but we can't give that to our users very easily without doing some horrible things by connecting live Google Sheets and things like that. So what everyone wants for multi-select parameters is someone to select, I want to select all these bunch of categories or cities or products that got a particular treatment, and I've got the control group that they didn't get a treatment. I want to see how they changed, and we can now do that with this new feature called set actions. So if I look how I set it up here, I've got here my subcategories, and I've created 2 sets of my subcategories here. So all you need to do that is just go in here and go subcategory, create set. And both of these sets are I've made them empty. So there we go, they've got nothing selected at all. And I've created a formula off of those sets called my subcat TF for some reason. And it says if subcat 1, then group 1, if subcat 2, then group 2, else rest. So hopefully you could see how that would work if I was actually using, in fact, got a couple of minutes, let's just show. So if I actually was using sets like that, oops, I can go like that, I can click apply, and I've now got that as a particular grouping. But we can now do this with actions. And what I've got here is I've got a classic scenario where I've got some subcategories, and I've got how things did in before and after events. If I go to my dashboard and I go to my actions, I've got a brand new action called change set values. So I'm going to set this off my bar chart, and this is going to be called add to group 1. We're going to keep the set values. You'll see what this does in a second. My set's in Superstore. My set is set 1. And I'll leave this as a menu item, and you'll see why in a second. And I'm going to also set up another one, which is called add to group 2. And it's off of my bar chart. It's off of that. And this one's going to subcat 1. Again, keep the values. And now I have freedom to custom group. So I can click on those. I'm going to use the control button. I'm going to select that one. So all of these categories got a particular treatment, and I can go like that, and I created a group. And these all got another treatment. They got a different advertising campaign. There we go. And the advertising campaign I did was on the, I don't know, let's call it in there. And now I've got a way of on the fly looking at how did the two groups and the control do before going into this campaign and after this campaign, and to see whether it was effective or not, or which particular treatment worked. If I want to change that and say, actually, oh, I forgot to add binders, I can change my groups on the fly. I can change them like that. So this is a really powerful feature that gets us around one of the main use cases, I would say, for multi-select parameters, which obviously gets a lot of attention because it's one of those really useful things that as desktop users we can do all this when we're doing non-production analytics. Second, we need to send it out to other users. They're restricted by which features they can do in terms of on-the-fly categorizations, and this really solves that problem. So that's all I've got to show. I hope you can see the interactivity really is the key to creating great visuals and great visual experiences, how you can really get your users to drill down from a high level and go down into the detail. You can reveal charts, you can create a real user behavior, and I feel this is almost like an app-like behavior. The things that we create almost feel like apps that do specific jobs very, very well. So I hope you found it useful, and I will pass it back to Patrick for anything we've got in the Q&A.
Hey, Simon. For our audience, if you have any questions, go ahead and put those in the Q&A portion of the channel. We're watching that. We don't have any questions here at the moment. I do want to pass along, if you're interested in the beta, the last piece that Simon was showing here was in was in a beta version. If you're interested in trying that out at all, the site for that is prerelease.tableau.com. I just put that into the chat as well for anyone who's interested. Our betas are open to customers who are interested in trying that out. Anyway, that was a wonderful presentation. I don't think.
Oh, it was so good we got no questions at all.
I think you've blown them away, Simon. So some people asked also about the recording and the location. I've shared the URL to the Think and Talk Data YouTube playlist where we'll put this. And Simon, you said that I believe that we're going to have this workbook available to look at. This workbook is in. Looks like there's one that's a beta workbook. That would be the 201.3. Do you have an earlier version of the workbook for the things that don't have the?
Yes, I could definitely create obviously it wouldn't have the wave actions, but you could change the sets manually to create that. But yeah, absolutely, I can post this because it's probably a fairly interesting build as well, and how you do this kind of when you're looking at lots of categories together and they've got different scales. This way of looking at them, how they change from a particular point in time, is quite a good visual way of looking at things. So I think this will be interesting there anyway. So yeah, I can post that, and yeah, absolutely, yeah, I will post a completed version of the main presentation, which is in 2018.2.
That's great. This really amazing to see. I have not yet myself played with the beta, so it's great to see the new features in use and what you're doing with them. I'm very excited for the new action filter items that you showed there with using these buttons. So that's a wonderful thing.
I mean, I think it's probably one of the most requested things that I see that can't be done in Tableau in the community is like, how do you, and this is probably one of the, which I kind of agree with Tableau here, is that they say that we didn't create parameters. Parameters exist in all of the programs, and we implemented them exactly the same way. You know, they are set on creation. They have a single value and they are global, and Tableau is just done that. And therefore Tableau's approach has been, I think, to try and knock off the use cases of where people want dynamic parameters and multi-select parameters, such as one of the big use cases before was for cross-data source filtering. And so they introduced cross-data source filtering. And also with cross-database joins, you very rarely need that now anyway. And with LODs as well, you can get around things we used to use with blending a lot more now. And so this, again, knocks off another one of those use cases of how do we let my users classify things on the fly. And I think this is going to be an absolutely game-changing addition to our arsenal. So I do hope it comes out in the main release.
Yeah, that's great. As Simon says, that he's alluding to the fact that there is an idea in the community called dynamic parameters. It's been our top voted idea contribution for a very long time, but the definition of what that means, of what dynamic parameters means, lots of different things to lots of different people. And so the approach that development has taken here at Tableau is to try to understand those use cases and piecemeal take off the most interesting ones for our customers and build those as they can and deliver them as part of the product. And so this is, again, another part of that being delivered in the product. I also wanted to point out that the use of the sheet selectors, you can look up sheet selector in Tableau. You'll run across all sorts of instances of that on the internet. There's many versions and posts. Here's one from Simon right here in the community. Highly recommend becoming familiar with this sheet selector tool, because many of the questions that we see in the community are things like, I need to do this, and then I need to do this, and then I need to do this, and they try to show multiple things on the same view that don't necessarily work together very well, and so pulling back a moment and saying, well, would a sheet selector be actually a better choice, showing this in different views and then selecting the view that's appropriate based on interactivity within the sheet is really a great approach, and I love that you showed it off here. So.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at this one here, actually, this is actually a completely different measure. So this is looking at the change from a particular point in time again, whereas this is looking at absolutes. And so this is a great use case where it'd be very hard, if possible at all, to essentially this thing of how can I change the measure that's used in the viz when I click on something? And this is how you do it. So it's a completely different calculation.
Yeah, really, really great. So, okay. Well, Simon, I don't see any other questions in there, so we'll wrap it up. Oh, I did wanted to say, did you see something? Patrick Byrne is oh, I don't see one in there. Do you want to unmute?
So Simon, we have another question from Jason Scarlett about any tips on navigation between workbooks with actions.
So between actual workbooks, so the only way that I know currently is to set them up as a URL action. So in the action here, it's only going to work on obviously on server. So what you can do is you can set up your dashboard you want to navigate to will have a URL attached to it in server. You've got a go to URL action. So I could say when I click here, go to, I'm just going to go www.bbc.co.uk on this particular one here, and this should. Oh, of course, it's on a sheet swap. And I was going to get rid of my sheet swap on my some of my navigation. If I click on here now. Oh, I've turned off the, hang on 1 second. Let's just do this on a click. So this is how you can basically get something to send yourself to, it's not working. Oh, there we go. There we go. So that's how you can get it to send that. If you put the URL for your dashboard that you want to go to in the in that URL, it should navigate to that particular dashboard. There's a great set of blogs by Ryan Sleeper, who goes into great detail on how you can do this, and he's got a great series showing you how you can navigate between sheets and also how you can navigate between dashboards as well. So that would be my advice on how you achieve that.
Okay.
And then there's one other question here just about the workbooks that were being used today. Are they going to be made available?
Absolutely, yeah. I will send, because this is obviously a working version where I've kind of built it throughout. So what I'll do is I will sort of clean it up a little bit and put a clean version that will have all the tricks sort of embedded in here, and you can, anyone can go and have a look exactly how each of the actions is built. And in actual fact, all of these navigations that I've used throughout the entire presentation are all built off the navigational data source with increment ID. So you can actually have a look. It's actually quite a nice way of presenting, especially if you've got Tableau content. It's quite nice to have a mixture of Tableau and not Tableau content, rather than going in and out of Tableau and PowerPoint or Google Slides. To do it all in one place is quite nice quite a lot of the time. So you can get Tableau to do a pretty good impression of PowerPoint by using these navigations as well. So yeah, I'll put the whole of the workbook up there, and I'll downgrade the beta version down to 2018.2. and put that on there as well, although bear in mind that the set action I showed won't actually work. You'll have to do the sets manually yourself.
Yeah. Okay. For those who, I don't think we mentioned at the beginning, Simon is joining us from the UK, and so it's later in his day there, and I want to thank him for presenting today, offering to present, and doing this presentation today for our community. If you are interested in creating a presentation for Think Data Thursday as well, we're always looking for more presenters. This is meant to be a customer to customer time to share solutions that you've worked with, and just want to again thank you Simon, thanks for your time today.
No, thanks a lot for inviting me. It's been great fun.
Yeah, and with that we'll just call it a day. I'll have the video up here later today. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.